Welcome to the Success Ascend. My name is Pat Mancuso, and I am the host of our show. And today we have a very special guest and someone who I have followed for a long, long time. In fact, when he committed to us, I went back on my shelf and I found his first book. And so I am really excited we're here today with Bob Burg. So let me tell you a little bit about Bob. For over 30 years, Bob Burg has been successfully showing entrepreneurs, leaders, and sales professionals how to communicate their value and accelerate their business referrals. Although for years he was best known for his sales classic, Endless Referrals, which is where I first came across Bob. It's his business parable, The Go-Giver, co-authored with John David Mann, that has created a worldwide movement. While part of his 4-book series, The Go-Giver itself, has sold more than 1 million copies and been translated in 30 languages. It is rated number 10 on Inc. magazine's list of most motivational books ever written and was on HubSpot's 20 most highly rated sales books of all time. Bob is an advocate, supporter, and defender of free enterprise. Bob, we need a lot of that today, for sure. Believing that the amount of money one makes is directly in proportion to how many people they serve. He is an unapologetic animal fanatic and served on the board of directors of Fury Friends Adoption and Clinic in his town of Jupiter, Florida. So, Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pat. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, listen, my pleasure. So, Bob, before we get into, I know you're going to bring some amazing content to us. I always ask my guests, what's one thing about Bob that wasn't on paper that we should know?
Oh, I don't know if it should be known or not, but that I'm very much an introvert and prefer to be a loner with very, very small groups of trusted friends as opposed to being out in crowds.
Isn't that interesting? And yet you've taught and impacted people at such a high level on how to build relationships. So it can be done whether you're an introvert or extrovert,
Absolutely.
Which is absolutely true. So, Bob, I want to get into, we've got some great questions for you today, but I do want to ask you one question. The Success Ascent is about entrepreneurs and their journey of success. And obviously you've had a lot of success. What would you share with entrepreneurs about your journey of success that you've learned or that maybe you learned the hard way?
Well, I've had a lot of failures too. And I think that every entrepreneur who attains a certain level of success has those failures. And I think that's something very important for an entrepreneur to learn. Not that we should seek failures, of course. That would be ridiculous. They happen without our help,
Right.
And so, but we need to know that that it's part of it. It's part of the growth. It's part of the story. It's part of the journey. And I think what knocks a lot of people out of the business early who would otherwise be very successful entrepreneurs isn't the failures or how much you're told no at the beginning. It's thinking you're the only one having to go through these failures and you're the only one being told no, because, we look at others who are already where we want to be and we think, oh, it just happened for them. It just, it was easy. And of course, that's not true at all. They've already just been through all that stuff already and move through it.
So if you had to give advice to a 20-year-old or 22-year-old entrepreneur, and some entrepreneurs even starting before that, what advice would you give to them today if you knew back when you were that age?
Well, I mean, I consider that there are 3 basic principles for entrepreneurial success sandwiched in between 2 major concepts. And the first concept is desire, to know what it is that you really desire to do, desire to accomplish. Okay.
Right.
And Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich says all great things, all great success begins with a burning desire. Now, that desire should not be confused with attachment. We don't want to be attached to the results, but we still want to have that desire, that all-encompassing, this is what we want to do. So it starts with that. Then I think step number 1 is to seek out and find the system. Learn how to do what you want to do, because the chances are about 100% that what you want to do has already been done by someone else, probably many others.
Yeah.
And so you find out how they did it. You get books, you get audios, you watch videos, you go to seminars, you do whatever it is you have to do to get the information. I define a system as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles, the key being predictability. So if it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, then you know all you need to do is A and continue to do A and continue to do A, and eventually you're going to get those desired results. So it's seek out and find the information, seek out and find the system. Number two is to take action. Knowledge without action is the same as not having any knowledge at all, right?
Yeah.
So we don't need to wait until we know 100% about how to do something, because if we wait till that time, we're never going to do it. It doesn't mean you should do something haphazardly, of course, but it means that once you have enough information to begin, start, get started. You'll course correct along the way. Step number three is be persistent or outlast the no's. And again, this goes back to understanding that it's just part of it. My great friends Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton co-authored a book many, many years ago, a parable called Go for No, where they say that yes is the destination, no is how you get there. And so and it's a great book. And then so you've got the first principle, which is desire. Then you've got, find the system, take action. You've got be persistent. And then the last part of that sandwich, if you will, the last concept is belief. And that is belief in what you're doing, belief that what you're doing will bring value to others, value to the world, belief in yourself, that you have what it takes to make it happen. And again, it doesn't always start out like that. Sometimes the belief builds as you start to see those small successes, which is why each of these build upon one another.
So we shouldn't reinvent the wheel, is what you're saying, because the wheel is already there. We can already use that. And I love the way that you put that conversation together. Let's talk about the Go-Giver. I mean, what a phenomenon, what an amazing success. Where did it start? Like, what was the premise of the Go-Giver parables?
Well, the premise of all of them is basically that shifting your focus, and this is really where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. And doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well, and not for some way out there woo-woo magical mystical reasons, but actually for very logical, rational reasons. When you're that person who can take your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, discovering what they want, need, and desire, helping them solve and overcome their challenges and problems. When you can focus on helping bring them closer to happiness, people feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They want to tell others about you. So that's really the premise. The idea came from originally from a book I had out years ago called Endless Referrals, which was a book for entrepreneurs and salespeople who knew they had a great product or service, but they didn't necessarily feel confident or comfortable going into their local communities and building kinds of relationships that would result in people wanting to do business with them and or refer them to others. So that was a guidebook. It was a system. But I'd always enjoyed parables and thought, wouldn't it be great if we could take the basic premise of endless referrals, that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to others, and bring that into a parable. So I asked John David Mann, who was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write for, who even back then was known as a brilliant writer.
Right.
And I asked him if he would be the co-author and lead writer. And fortunately, he said yes, because I could never have done, I'm a how-to author. I could never have done what he did with that. But he's just an absolutely magnificent writer. And, together, combining on it, we were able to put together that first one in the story. We got rejected by 24 publishers first before the 25th finally picked it up.
Talk about persistence, right? I mean, talk about your model that you shared a few minutes ago. So, one of the principles in the book is influence. And how does Go-Giver create influence both personally and professionally in a business?
Well, when you think about influence, and that term has been now so overused that there are just, it seems like dozens of different definitions of what influence even means. So on a very surface level, influence can be defined as simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. Okay, by definition, that's influence. Now,
Right.
that's its definition, but that is not its essence. Okay, the essence of influence is pull.
Yeah.
Pull as opposed to push, as in how far can you push a rope? And the answer is not very far, well, at least not very fast or very, very
Right.
effective, which is why, great influencers don't push, right? They don't push their ideas on others. They don't push themselves on others. They're not push E. You never hear people say, wow, that Tom or that Nancy, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with people. No, Nancy is very influential. She has a lot of pull with people, because that's what influence is. It's pull. It's an attraction.
Yeah.
Great influencers, what John and I in our the last book in the series, the GoGiver Influencer, what we call genuine influence, right?
Mhm.
Genuine influencers attract people first to themselves
Right.
and only then to their idea. They do this again, not through push, but through pull. And this pull happens when your focus is in the right place. See, I believe we need to be internally motivated, but outwardly focused. So the genuine influencer always asks questions to make sure they're outwardly focused. How does what I'm asking this person to do align with their goals?
Right. Who they are.
Right, with their wants, their needs, their desires. How does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their values?
Right.
And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully, intelligently, authentically, or genuinely,
Right.
right? Now, we come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment, as
Sure.
opposed to trying to depend on some type of compliance, manipulation, and those things.
So this might be a little off topic. However, I think for me, it would be a great question to hear your perspective on, because you are a person that I feel has genuine influence and impact on people. And yet we have so many people in our world today who have these large numbers of people that follow them. They're considered influencers.
Right.
And yet they really don't demonstrate what you just talked about. So what's your perspective on those type of people?
Well, I mean, they do have influence. Again, can they move a person or persons to a desired action? If a company is paying someone on Instagram, let's say, to wear some clothes,
Sure.
okay, or
Sure.
because that's usually what you see, right?
Yep.
Or have show a product or something. Well, is that any different from when a years ago on TV, a celebrity actor who was a TV starred on a TV show was selling aspirin?
Pitch the product. Sure. Okay.
Right.
Makes sense.
So people like them and they want to, they associate them with a good feeling. So, I mean, I think it's the same. It's really the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
different
makes
medium.
sense. Well, and I just, I kind of thought about, well, it'd be an interesting question to hear your thoughts on. So, is there any misconceptions about the GoGiver? I mean, are there people maybe hear the title and they feel like, well, I might get taken advantage of by giving?
Right.
Talk about your thoughts around that.
Yeah, well, there are a few. I think there are a few misperceptions, and I think it's usually before someone's read the book. They hear the title, "The Go-Giver," and they think, "Well, that means I'm just giving constantly and it's self-sacrificial." First, there's nothing about being a go-giver that is congruent with being anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. It's simply understanding that to the degree you shift your focus and place it on others,
Sure.
that's the degree you're going to develop the relationships where, business, friendship, relationship, what have you, is going to take place. If a person finds themselves being constantly taken advantage of, and I don't mean once or twice, or that's part of life, right? Unless we never talk to anyone or trust anyone ever, it's going to happen every so often, but it doesn't have to happen too much. But if somebody feels like they're a nice person, they're a giving person, and they're constantly being taken advantage of, it's important to understand that you're being taken advantage of not because you're nice, or because you're a giver, you're being taken advantage of because you're doing things in a certain way that
Right.
create the context and environment for you to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And so it's important that the person sees this, and that they then can bring this from an unconscious type of situation to
Right.
something in their consciousness, and they can try to determine why they're doing that. And there are many reasons why people will constantly allow themselves to be victims. Uh,
Mhm.
and it can be anything from a worthiness issue. It can be not having the tools. It can be wanting a sense of the tools to be able to say no, or to be able to, it can be a payoff of, when you're the victim, it kind of gives
Sure.
you the excuse for not being successful, or it gets other people feeling sorry for you. And I'm not saying anyone does that or doesn't. I'm saying that, if you're constantly being taken advantage of and it's avoidable, which it is,
Right.
and it's still happening, you've got to start to live in truth and ask yourself, well, why am I always involved? Why is it always me who's involved?
On the last podcast, the gentleman said, look in the mirror because the problem's looking at you in the mirror. Like, it's your problem and there's the solution looking at you.
Right. And it doesn't mean that that person who took advantage of you was correct
Right.
in what
Right.
they did. They're not, of course. But it
Sure.
means that you've also got to take responsibility for certain things in your life that are a pattern, and
Absolutely.
bring it into consciousness, because it's only when we're aware of an issue that
Yeah.
we're in a position to be able to effectively and constructively do something about it.
That makes sense. So, this question, I had is: was there one piece of advice that you received before you ever knew anything about being a go-giver entailed that was a difference maker for you?
Yeah, I would say it was close to 40 years ago. I had been in sales for a couple of years, and after a rough start, because I had had no formal sales experience, I started to really learn sales and was doing very well. And about 2 years into my sales career, I went over to a different company selling a high ticket product, and I was really in a slump right from the beginning, and I couldn't seem to get out of it. And I was putting pressure on myself, which of course is the exact wrong thing to do. And I was focused on myself and making the sale as opposed to how I could serve, the prospective customer.
Sure.
And I remember coming back to the office one day, and one of the people there, he was not in the sales department. I think he was an engineer or something. He was a much, much older guy, and he retired soon after that. But he was one of the, I didn't know him very well, but he was one of these people. He didn't say much, but whenever he did, it was always something profound.
Okay.
And I think he saw me as sort of Joe in The Go-Giver, who would be written about 25 years or so later. He saw me as that young, up and coming, ambitious, aggressive sales guy with a lot of potential, but whose focus was totally backwards.
Okay.
And he said to me, Berg, he was a last name kind of guy. He said, Berg, can I give you some advice? And I said, yeah, please do. I need it. And he said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target is
Mhm.
serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he said, you'll get a reward,
Yeah, you make a lot of money.
and that reward will come in the form of money,
Sure.
and you can
Makes
do with
sense.
that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. Your target is serving others.
Yeah.
And, Pat, that I think is really kind of when it hit me that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson.
Right.
Great salesmanship is never about the product or service, as important as those are. Great salesmanship is always about the other person. It's about those people whose lives you are trying to bring value to. It's really, when you think about it, it's about those people whose lives are better just because you are part of it.
Yeah. It makes it.
Yeah,
It's so simple, right? I mean, it
right.
makes so much sense. This one last one I want to probe because it'll be real interesting in kind of applying it today. So you make an interesting point that in the book about that's it's kind of totally congruent with human nature. Like like in our time today, like this go-giver is like human nature, right?
Right.
So talk about that a little bit.
Well, Yeah, I mean the philosophy of the go-giver, everything about it ties into human nature. What are those elements of humanity that, while we're all individuals, of course, what is it that we all have in common? Well, I think Dale Carnegie summarized it brilliantly in his classic How to Win Friends and Influence People. In fact, I think this sentence was the underlying premise of his entire book. And I once asked a Dale Carnegie instructor if he agreed, and he did. And that's where Mr. Carnegie said, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we realize that nobody's going to buy from us because we have a quota to meet, but rather because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so,
Right.
now we're acting congruently with human nature. Now we're living in truth. Now we're understanding that if we want this sale to take place, we've got to lose that self-interest, right? We've got to, not even if you don't lose it, suspend that
Sure.
self-interest,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Suspend it and focus absolutely and entirely on that other person. Remember, as John David Mann and I say in the Go Givers Sell More, the follow-up to the Go Giver, money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you
Yeah.
will, to value's lightning, which means nothing more than that the value must come first. The value must be the focus, the value you're providing another person, right?
Right.
Because that's why they are going to do business with you. Okay. And so the money you receive is simply a very natural result of
Yeah.
the value you've provided, just like the guy who told me about the target and the reward.
Makes so much sense. So, there's two questions I want to ask you real quick because I know we've got a hard stop here coming up. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
I think the best advice I've ever been given wasn't really told. It was something I observed.
Okay.
And it's really the way my dad always interacted with others. My dad, to me, the master of people skills. And I mean, people met my dad and just loved him and so forth. And it was really because of the interest, the genuine, authentic interest he showed in everyone else. It didn't matter who they were, it didn't matter their position. He was always interested in them and their family and their work and it just, and so I always say the single greatest people skill, right, is
Yes.
a highly developed and authentic interest in the other person. And I learned that simply through observing him.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't directly said to you. However, it certainly impacted you. So I'm going to flip that upside down real quick. What's the worst advice that you've ever been given that hopefully you didn't follow? And if you did, what did you learn?
Oh, I remember somebody said to me, if you want to make it in this world, you've got to be ruthless, take no prisoners, don't worry who you're hurting, and just, and so forth. I was young then, and I still knew that was wrong. It
Yeah.
didn't seem to make sense.
It's
So,
real interesting how often that comes up from people as
well,
well.
what do we learn by watching movies and TV?
Yeah.
Right? You see the two types of people, the good people who are honest and hardworking, and they're poor and they're always being taken advantage of by who? The wealthy person who's mean and ruthless and heartless and has no soul, right? That's the message, unfortunately, that the world gives us, and it's
Yeah.
the message that so many accept. And I think that's why we've got to be conscious of that and always look at prosperity thinking, study prosperity teachers, people like Randy Gage and David Nagel and Sharon Lecter and Ellen Rogan and Bob Proctor and Ken Honda, and so many people who write, speak, blog, what have you on abundance. And they're always talking about two things. One, there's plenty for everyone, right?
Right.
I mean, there really is. I mean,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's why, and that 99.9% of the issue with not receiving this prosperity is unconscious,
Yeah.
and we've got to move that from unconscious to conscious, because only then can we effectively deal with it.
Well, and the prosperity also is the ability to impact others, right? So when you earn that, when you have that opportunity to earn at a high level, then you have the responsibility to also impact and give.
Yeah, but I think it also works the other way. I think you attain that prosperity by finding ways
There you go.
to provide a lot of value. So I don't think it's an either or.
Yeah.
You find ways to bring value to others, bring value to the marketplace, bring value to individuals, and you're rewarded, right, with
Sure.
money,
Sure.
and you're able to then provide even more value, give even more value, and receive even more and give even more, and it's an upward
Circle. Yeah.
spiral.
So Bob, we're going to close out here. I'd love a final thought from you to kind of take us away. I'm going to scroll at the bottom here, your GoGivers Alliance website, and what
Mhm.
would people get by going there?
Well, it's a group of people. We call it a mentor online mentorship. It's really a membership community. We call it a mentorship community because
Okay,
it's so many people. We all mentor each other.
absolutely.
So yeah, so we strategize together, we connect, we build great relationships, and we just there's so much wisdom that goes through that. So yeah, it's neat to check out.
So what would be your final thought? Take us away.
I mean, I think a final thought is to just always be asking yourself, how do I bring value to others? How do I give value to others? How do I make the world a better place for someone? It doesn't have to be anything spectacular. It could be when you're pouring your coffee and someone else at the convenience store is grabbing a cup. You just kind of look at them, hold the pot up and say coffee, and you pour it for them.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't have to be anything spectacular, or it might be something really spectacular.
yeah,
But if you always just find ways to bring value to the world, um, you'll never go wrong.
yeah. Well, Bob, I just truly want to thank you. And first of all, you've impacted my life. When I first got into real estate in the 90s, one of the books I was told to buy was Endless Referrals, and it's still on my shelf in my office. And
Thank you.
so I truly, you've had an impact. And I also want to thank you for your time today. I know how busy you are and how valuable that time is, and for sharing with our listeners today. I'm just truly grateful for that.
Uh,
So thank you so much.
Pat, it's my honor. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So everybody, thank you so much. As I end every show, be happy, be healthy, be safe until we see you again. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much, Bob.